He blew bubbles to soothe a child, unaware her billionaire mother was watching. In a grand marble lobby gleaming with wealth. A janitor knelt quietly on the floor, blowing bubbles toward a trembling little girl. Her small shoulders shook, her eyes wide with confusion. The workers and executives passing by barely looked, except one woman, standing still, frozen by what she saw. What began as a simple act of kindness would soon uncover layers of prejudice, privilege, and a truth that could humble an empire. He was just a janitor to most, but in that moment, he was the only person who saw the child, not the money, not the status. And soon, everyone would know his name. Malcolm worked nights at one of the most prestigious investment firms in the city. His uniform was crisp, his badge dull with age, and his presence invisible, at least to those who chose not to see him. Every evening he scrubbed the marble floors, emptied the trash, and polished the chrome surfaces that reflected a world he would never be part of. It wasn't that Malcolm dreamed of wealth. What he longed for was respect, the simple dignity of being acknowledged. He was meticulous, quiet, and thoughtful, always taking pride in leaving every room better than he found it. On that particular morning, the firm was hosting a high-profile charity gala. Security guards lined the hallways. Executives in tailored suits rehearsed speeches about opportunity and equality. Malcolm moved silently among them, mop in hand, his eyes lowered, but his mind wide awake. That's when he noticed her. A little girl sitting alone on the marble floor, her hands pressed against her ears. Her blonde hair was neatly braided, her dress was expensive but wrinkled, and her eyes were full of fear. People stepped around her as though she were invisible. Malcolm paused, recognizing something more profound. Not just fear, but distress. The kind he'd seen before in his nephew, a boy on the autism spectrum who found comfort in patterns and quiet gestures. Without a word, Malcolm reached for the small bottle of bubbles he carried in his cleaning cart, a leftover from his nephew's last visit. He dipped the wand, lifted it gently, and blew. The first bubble floated up, catching the light from the crystal chandeliers above. Then another and another, shimmering spheres gliding through the air, soft and silent. The girl stopped rocking. Her eyes followed the bubbles, tracing their movement with wonder. Her breathing slowed. Malcolm smiled quietly, not realizing that the act, so innocent, so pure, had already caught someone's attention. At the far end of the hall, a group of executives whispered among themselves. One of them frowned, muttering about unprofessional behavior. Another rolled his eyes, saying something about keeping the help in line. They didn't see the girl's calm return, only the janitor kneeling on their polished floor. But one woman did. Dressed in an elegant blue coat, she stood apart from the rest, watching. She didn't speak. Her gaze was unreadable. Within minutes, a supervisor approached. His tone was sharp, his voice cutting through the fragile peace. The bubbles stopped. The girl began to tremble again. Malcolm stood, apologizing softly, explaining he'd only been trying to help. But the supervisor wasn't listening. He only saw a janitor disrupting a billion-dollar firm's image before their wealthy guests arrived. He ordered Malcolm to return to his duties, immediately. Malcolm obeyed, his heart sinking as he put away the bubble wand. Behind him, the little girl whimpered, her distress rising once more. But before he could step away, the woman in the blue coat moved forward. Her heels echoed sharply against the marble, each step commanding silence. The supervisor turned, ready to impress her, until he saw the look in her eyes. She knelt beside the child, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The girl clung to her, murmuring. And then the woman turned to Malcolm. Her expression wasn't angry. It was recognition, because that woman was Evelyn Langford, CEO of the firm, philanthropist, and one of the wealthiest women in the country. She was highly regarded, and the little girl was her daughter. The air seemed to freeze. The executives who had laughed moments ago stood in silence, their arrogance dissolving into unease. Evelyn Langford rose slowly, her daughter still clutching her hand. She asked what had happened, her voice calm but edged with steel. No one answered. Not at first. the supervisor stammered, his earlier confidence fading. He mentioned a disturbance, unprofessional conduct, and disruption to the event. Malcolm said nothing. He didn't need to. The truth floated there, as clear as the bubbles had been moments ago. Evelyn's gaze shifted from her trembling daughter to the janitor's bucket, to the faint shimmer of soap still glistening on the marble. Her expression softened, then hardened again. Without raising her voice, she dismissed the executives. She didn't care about their discomfort, their explanations, or their hierarchy. She cared that a man who had shown compassion had been humiliated for it. Turning to Malcolm, she thanked him. Not politely, sincerely. She asked how he knew what to do. He told her about his nephew, how bubbles always helped him calm down. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Evelyn listened carefully, her eyes misting. By the time the gala began, whispers filled the building. Guests arrived expecting champagne and speeches, but what they got was a story. Evelyn took the stage and started with words no one expected. Today, I witnessed kindness in its purest form, and prejudice in its ugliest. She told the story of the janitor who soothed her daughter when no one else would. She spoke of how easy it is to overlook humanity behind a uniform, and how dangerous it is to assume worth based on position or color. By the time she finished, the hall was silent. The next day, Malcolm arrived for work expecting trouble. Instead, he found something different. His name was on the morning memo, not for discipline, but for recognition. Evelyn had ordered a review of the company's diversity and ethics policies, starting with how employees were treated at every level. Malcolm was offered a new position, not as a janitor, but as a community outreach coordinator, helping train staff in empathy and inclusion. The same people who once ignored him now greeted him with respect. Yet he stayed humble, continuing to clean the small hallway near the lobby once a week, saying it helped him stay grounded. The story spread beyond the company walls. Media outlets called it the bubble incident. Some saw it as a tale of redemption. Others saw it as proof that racism often hides behind corporate politeness, unnoticed until exposed by compassion. But for Malcolm, it was never about exposure or reward. It was about a frightened child who reminded him that kindness transcends status, color, or wealth. As for Evelyn, she began funding programs for autistic children in underserved communities, in Malcolm's name. She often said that the moment she saw those bubbles floating in her marble lobby, she realized how much her world needed to change. The last time they met, Evelyn's daughter ran to Malcolm laughing, reaching for his pocket where she knew he kept a small bottle of bubbles, and as the bubbles rose again, soft, weightless, and free, they seemed to carry a message for anyone willing to see it. Sometimes, it takes the gentlest act from the most overlooked person to expose the deepest cracks in society. Because racism doesn't always shout, sometimes it whispers, in who we ignore, in whose kindness we doubt. And maybe the question we should all ask is this: how many bubbles of compassion have we let burst before we even noticed them?